be speaking about the stereotypes and standards and their impact on mental wellness of the beauty, beauty stereotypes and standards. But to be very honest, I've spent a lot of time in the publishing industry, in the entertainment industry, and I'm also an MC and a live host. So I think I've kind of been able to pull all of those things together and have experienced many stereotypes, many lacks of inclusivity, many beauty standards that just don't fit the mold. And I think at a very young age, I already decided that I was just going to be who I am and I was going to just wing it. But not everybody feels that way. And I'm 51 years old now, and when I was 10 or 15 or 20, the world was a very, very different place, and the impulses and the impacts and the things that I saw and who I compared or contrasted to were a very, very different thing. So the way that I've been able to kind of immerse myself into the current time is through social media. I spend a fair bit of time on social media, enough to know the positive impact and also the not positive impact. And I use myself as a conduit for all of these experiences so that I can speak with some level of depth of experience when sitting on a panel with such esteemed people. If I am experiencing it at the age of 51, can you imagine what is being experienced by many of our youth? Because they've grown up with it doesn't necessarily mean that they're coping with all the stereotypes and the impressions and the things that are placed upon them easier. It's not easier. It's just that they've grown up with it, and so therefore it's more acceptable. So I just want to take a little bit of time to also weave into what I'm saying, and please give me a timestamp if I've gone over limit. That the big impact of all of the kind of stereotypes and the comparisons that we're seeing actually is on our mental health. I see it on my mental health, and I actually interact with people across a very wide range of age groups, from young to older, elder persons, and I can see very similar impacts depending on how much time you actually take or how much time you spend in what I feel an alternative world is, which is social media. And that kind of impact that comes on our body image and the kind of anxiety that it also creates, in addition to the anxieties that you all have spoken about, is like a tenfold anxiety. I also want to say that I won't talk for too long because I actually do much better responding to questions, and I want to get us to the Q&A part really, really fast. I also want to say that I learned differently. I talk with my hands all the time, so I might have learned that I actually have ADHD today, but I have no problems with that. And I also want to just add that the privilege that I have enjoyed of the education that I received by no means is lost on me, what my parents were able to give to me, and that's why I feel very compelled to be able to be on panels and to talk and to use that depth of experience and that privilege to share with all of you. Maybe some of the things I might say may not resonate with you, and I apologize in advance if they don't, but I will try to cover as much deeply, broadly, and what's the other one? Height, yeah. Anyway, I really believe in connection, community, and conversation, and I think that's really what people are looking for and searching for when they go on to social media. And a lot of the reason is because many of us have been, when I say us, I'm speaking about youth, I'm speaking about all ages, yeah? Because I don't think we need to separate the children from the adults and from the elders. We're human beings, and we're all connected by the same thread of this desire for connection, community, and conversation. And many of us, I think, are walking around without having actually felt the safety of self-acceptance in our society and our home or amongst our peers. And there are myriad number of reasons why and complexities that can range from, the dismissive parent to the dismissive society to racism to homophobia. It's a very mixed mixed thing, many layers and many complexities. I think the pressure of how this feels actually, as if we are not good enough, can be very oppressive, very confusing, and very painful. I mean, I'm just going to throw it out. Most of us are adults in this room. Who's ever felt oppressed, confused, or in pain in this room? Just raise your hand. Right? So we're all above a certain age, you know, and it doesn't mean, I think, that we get a free pass and we know it all because we're adults. So I think if we keep in mind that what we feel is what we feel, it allows us this opportunity to understand also what our youth are feeling without putting that barrier into there between parent, child, father, mother, boy, girl, any of that, yeah? I think the reason I've chosen social media is that what happens on social media, and is everybody on social media here? Okay, so we all understand that there's some impact and some impression that we get from social media. But I think when we keep seeing this pressure of how we're not good enough, which we can feel at the age of 70 or 7, I think, but we see it times 1,000, okay? In these 20 and 30-second stories, especially, in these small paragraphs, or maybe sometimes really long paragraphs of expression that people are writing. I think that we begin to think that all of this stuff is somehow defining us, because it feels so real. And it feels like we're actually having community and connection, but it can also have a really, I don't want to use the word negative because it's a negative word, but it can have a less desirable impact on the way that we feel about our bodies and our faces and who we are in this world. I think 90% of the perceptions that we are being exposed to or are exposing ourselves to, we have to bear in mind that they're just moments within a story timeline. They're just moments. And there's little evidence of how this story came to be. I mean, if you watch a 20-second video, you're getting the best part, right? Or maybe the worst part, but you don't have any idea how it began or how it ended or what is happening in that person's life. Instead, I think what we're actually getting is this continuous ask for our attention. We're getting a lot of cleverness, which goes on loop. There's a lot of content, and then there's filters, and then there's music, and there's action. And this excites us in many ways, but it also contributes to the other kind of excitement, which actually is anxiety as well. And you mentioned earlier this rise in anxiety. I can tell you straight from my own heart, in the last 2 years especially, my anxiety has gone off the charts in a way that I never ever have experienced in my entire life. You know, I'm also the child of divorce and remarriage, and I really never felt the impact of that. But in the last 2 years, everything felt. Did you guys feel it these last 2 years? Did you feel some sense of change, anxiety, worry? You know, and it's transforming us in so many ways. Why would it not transform a younger person who may not have had the experiences that we've had or the length of time on this earth to make the mistakes and actually pick themselves up again as well? I just want to say that I'm not, excuse the French, shitting on content on social media. I think creating content is beautiful. But I think a very important thing as parents and as the youth who are watching us is to remember that the algorithm is not your best friend. I know they like to talk of it as if the algorithm knows you. It's not your best friend. It's not the same as a conversation with a good friend advising you, hey, maybe you should not do that, or lay off of that, or your parent talking to you and saying, hey, you know, I think we could do this a different way. The algorithm is simply technology. And it's a technology that doesn't actually drive us into a variety of opinions or ideas, because it's basically feeding you what you want to know and hear. So before social media, you had to actually draw your impressions and understandings from a greater variety of sources. Now we're all going to the same sources, and if you understand the algorithm, after a while it just gives you what you want to hear, you know, what you want to see, what you want to be connected to. So as our youth are using, of course, social media for the value of connection and community and conversation, there's a lot of repetitive stuff. And there's a lot of great stuff too. But I can see that there's more repetitive stuff than there is great stuff because you never get to it because of the algorithms, basically. And I think that what happens as a result is that it's turning us and our thought processing and our feelings about ourselves into very sort of mechanical, very mind confusing, and very relentless. And basically what you're doing is you're in this big marketplace of opinions of what beauty is, opinions of what color skin you should have. And we don't have anymore, I think, that middle bit where we're like, actually, I don't really like this, and I'm going to turn away from it, because the mechanism keeps drawing us actually back into it. And I've seen it for myself. I'll just give you an example. I just took my first trip out of Singapore, my first plane ride after 2 years, and I was super excited, but it actually had a lot of anxiety build up inside of me. Suddenly I forgot what it was like to be on a plane and how it would feel. When I got off at the other end, the first thing I did when I got to the hotel wasn't, after taking a shower, was to start scrolling my phone. Why am I in another country scrolling my phone in a beautiful hotel where I could be outside, maybe exploring? Because it gave me a sense of security and safety. And two things can be true at the same time. There's a greater sense of security and safety because, okay, I can connect to people and have a conversation, but at the same time, I was repeating the same things that actually, ironically, make me more anxious. Does that make sense? Yeah. By the way, I can hold two opinions at the same time, so not trying to be contradictory for the sake of it. And I think the other thing about it is that, and taking it back, of course, too, because we're talking about beauty standards and everything else, there's no pause button on social media, right? The pause button is, I'm going to delete it off my phone, and then 2 days later, you've put it back on your phone because you feel that you've lost something. It's the impression of having lost something, but you feel that you've actually lost something. And I think the filtering then becomes very kind of laborious. I don't know if any of you have ever tried to delete stuff off of your social media accounts. Have you ever tried to do that? How long did it take you to stop doing that? 5 minutes, probably, right? So I'm bringing just to your attention how, because I think I use social media quite a lot like a quite young person as well. So, you just build and build and build all this information, which quite a lot of it is kind of a bit useless. And it just sits in your brain synapses, and it sits in your body. And I don't think we realize how actually extraordinarily odd that is. It's like having thousands of conversations sitting inside your body. And the other thing is that so much of content is video now, right? It feels like we're engaging with something real, like it's live, like it's an actual thing, but the content was created for this platform. So we have, again, no idea, except that we feel like this is something that is really contributing to this sense of myself and my being, and like, I want to be like you, because video is this beautiful moving image, but it also makes you kind of wrongfully, in a sense, believe that all of what you see is actually real. So it feels very live, it feels very immediate, and very urgent. And I think the urgency of what is out there contributes to this higher level of anxiety and this lower level of self-esteem. So I think all of it actually kind of sets off these bells within us, right? That can be comfortable or uncomfortable, really, depending on what emotional experiences we are actually having in our families and within our friendships. And that influences how we think and we feel about ourselves, right? So if you just take into consideration these hundreds and thousands of accounts that we follow because we feel connected to the person or the video or the photo, we don't like any of it sometimes. Sometimes we just follow people because we want to see how much trouble they're going to get into as well, right? So all of this, I think, we believe is going to say something about us and something about our life. So we go back in for more because it is actually a craving. It becomes like an addiction, and it replaces a lot of sometimes the real world experiences that we want to have within our families, with our friends, and in our community, and with our groups as well. So having said all of that, what can and should we do, right? I think that now more than ever, it's very, very important, and if we didn't know it over the last 2 years, we know it today in this group, in this room, to get to understand ourselves as the individuals that we are. And I say that because I guess most of you are parents, or you are siblings, or you have work with youth. This understanding needs to be passed down to our youth, that individuality is actually extremely precious, and it's really something that you actually already come with. And a lot of times going through stereotypes, things that you see on social media and stuff, a lot of it is homogeneity. But the valuing of the fact that we are very special individual human beings, and everything that is actually out there currently right now does not actually help to enhance that part of us. So that is great. Social media is wonderful. It's beautiful, and there's a lot of things going on. But what's happening is that there is a kind of a erasing of the originality of people. So I want to just talk really to parents actually right now, because I think we forget that as we go kind of along in life that we're adults now, and so therefore we're done with all the learning, right? We can kind of bypass this whole situation, so we're grown-ups. But actually the ease and honesty of understanding, let's say, what social media is, and not thinking of it as just rubbish and nonsense, but understanding algorithm, understanding the psychology, understanding the psychosis that it can actually also create in younger people is actually our responsibility as the adults in all of this. And I think when we have an ease and honesty also with ourselves, in understanding social media, but also, as I said in the beginning, the understanding of yourself, I think when you pass this down to your kids, right? It demonstrates that you're the grown-up, but by the way, I can also be a vulnerable grown-up. And I think it also shows that you can make mistakes, because I think it's important. One of the things I never had growing up was my parents ever admitting that they were wrong. And I could see it, but they didn't actually tell me. And I think it would have created these really positive dynamics and relationships with me and with my siblings as well. And I think it also shows our youth actually how to recover from things like anger and hurt and shame and pain, because I think what we're seeing with a lot of the youth is that there is this difficulty with handling pain. There's a difficulty with handling things that might happen. I'm not saying any of the things that are happening are right, bullying or any of those things, but there is a way to recover from all of these things. And how do we learn is that we actually learn through the experiences of our parents and our society and our community. So if we always see our parents and our society, let's say, a dad or a mom having poor body image, and that gets passed down. Kids just pick that up by osmosis, right? Or a parent having, being racialized or attacked for their race. Children pick that up and they bring that forward in their worlds as well. So I think it's important for us to actually do our work too, because it's quite easy to kind of say, oh, it's a big bad world out there. Well, I don't think it's actually as bad a world out there. I think we create all of our own little worlds, and I think that it's very important that we actually have ways in which we can navigate those worlds, that not everything is horrible and terrible, and we're not just surviving, even though I know that that's how it seems. And through our parents, we find out how to actually do those things. So I think the last thing that I just kind of want to say is that when you demonstrate all of this and you mirror all of these things to your children, I think that you have to also give them the same space to speak, to feel, to be understood, you know, to give them that space so that they also feel heard, loved, that they're not just your little robot who's just going to make everything right for you in your world and all the things that weren't right when you were growing up. And I think the most important part of all of this is that when children come towards their parents with their problems that sound terrifying maybe to us, because that's what happens. We get scared, or we get worried, or we get angry about what we're hearing, is that your reaction is the most important thing in their life, actually. You know, you come along and you say, you know, Mom and Dad, I feel ugly. I feel fat. I have no friends. Everyone thinks I suck. How do we actually handle this? Because it's such a shock to hear that, and you want to protect your child perhaps, or sometimes you just ignore what they're even saying because you just don't want to deal with it. So I think us as the adults in the room, we have to actually do the work to figure out, well, if that comes into my world, into my child's world, how am I actually going to figure it out to do something for them where my reaction to what I hear must be trustworthy, protective, not controlling, not critical, and not fear-ridden. And that means actually we have to be in a space or in a sense of our own sense of self and our own sense of self-control, so that no matter what happens, whatever the child brings to you, that they are not going to now face the most important conversation becomes them being a stigma to their own parents. So that's it. That's all I have to say. I know it's a lot. Did I go over time? You know, you're supposed to poke us. That's what you're supposed to do. You could have said, Auntie Anita, just like stop. Did I keep to the time?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And thank you so much. I just have one thing to ask everyone while we're just sitting here. I just want you to ask yourself some questions and see where you feel it in your body. Okay? I want to ask you, what does happiness feel like to you? And when I say the word, where do you feel it physically in your body? Okay? That's it.
It's an interesting question to end off.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.